In this world, dangerous creatures known as monsters threaten humanity. To protect the people from these monsters, those with sacred powers are needed, women known as saints. These saints have the ability to create powerful barriers, driving back the monsters and purifying the land. Their presence is a great blessing to national security, making it essential for every country to have at least one saint within its borders. The story then starts with our main character, Philia, a saint of immense renown, walked through the cobbled streets of Britonia, drawing the attention of all who passed by. Whispers filled the air with rumors of her recent journey to the northwest, where she had single-handedly vanquished monstrous threats and saved entire towns. Now back in the kingdom, she was a living legend, her feats spoken of with awe. She seemed flawless, capable of anything. Yet there was something about her that remained incomplete, a smile. Despite her perfection, she lacked the warmth that was expected from someone of her stature. As she passed, a nervous young boy greeted her. She turned her head in acknowledgement, but her face remained expressionless, offering no warmth, no smile. Saints were supposed to embody kindness, yet she stood apart, untouched by the emotions that others so easily shared. In the marketplace, Oswald, a traveler unfamiliar with Britonia, couldn't help but be intrigued by the sight of Philia. He asked a nearby vendor about her, and the vendor, recognizing his unfamiliarity, eagerly began to explain. Britonia, he said, was blessed with two saints. The other saint, Mia, was adored by all. Her warmth, kindness, and radiant smile made her a beloved figure in the kingdom. But the one that Oswald had just seen was Saint Philia, Mia's older sister, whose greatness was defined not by her charm, but by her sheer power. She had accomplished feats beyond belief, securing trade routes, summoning rain for crops, and creating life-saving medicines. Yet despite her extraordinary abilities, she was not universally adored. Some resented her. Later, Philia returned to her home, but she was met not with praise, but cold reproach from her mother. Instead of acknowledging her heroic deeds, her mother scolded her for wasting time fulfilling the people's endless requests. Her achievements were dismissed as arrogance and unnecessary display of superiority. Compared to Mia, who had breezed through her saint training and won the hearts of everyone around her, Philia was seen as a failure. To her mother, Philia had everything, except the one thing that truly mattered: a smile. Her mother's harsh words fell on deaf ears. Philia stood silently, her face unreadable as the reprimand continued. Afterward, the house fell into a heavy silence and Philia retreated into her thoughts. She reflected on the burden of being a saint, on how she had always been taught that her duty was to serve and protect. She had given everything to Britonia, yet still remained an outsider. She realized that no matter how much she had done for the kingdom, there was one thing that set her apart. That night, as rain poured down over Britonia, Philia stood before a glass pane, gazing at her reflection, trying to make sense of it all. She remembered her childhood, a time when she first realized that she was different. Even then, she couldn't smile. Perhaps that was why her parents had kept their distance. She remembered watching Mia bask in the love and adoration of others, effortlessly drawing people in with her warmth. Philia had understood early on that if she couldn't smile, she would have to make herself indispensable in other ways. Elsewhere, Oswald continued his research into Philia's life. He learned that she was born into a family of saints and had been sent to the church at the age of 5, where she endured years of grueling training. Despite her inability to smile, she excelled in every other aspect, mastering history, etiquette, magic, and martial arts. Her parents, seeing her inability to connect with others, pushed her to become perfect, one who could do anything, one who never faltered. By the age of 16, Philia had become a saint, hailed as the greatest of all time. Now at 19, she had earned the king's recognition and was engaged to Prince Julius, the second prince of Britonia. As Oswald absorbed this information, he was interrupted by a man dressed as a knight, who informed him that his highness had summoned him. Meanwhile, Philia walked the streets of Britonia, lost in thought. When she had been engaged to Prince Julius, she had believed it would finally earn her the recognition she had long sought. She thought her efforts would be valued at last. Yet as she walked, she saw a young boy laughing joyfully as his father returned home. She couldn't help but stare, longing for a connection she had never known. At home, her younger sister Mia greeted her with a bright smile. Though their house had never felt truly welcoming, Mia's warmth made it easier to return. As Mia excitedly spoke, she noticed Philia holding a small box. When Mia opened it, she found a delicate rose-shaped hairpin inside. She was surprised. Philia had never shown interest in such things, yet she had bought it for her. Mia beamed with happiness, eager to return the gesture. She offered to pick out an outfit for Philia's upcoming meeting with Prince Julius. Philia hesitated but didn't refuse. Julius had indeed asked to see her the next day. When Mia teasingly asked if it was a date, Philia didn't know how to answer. But since Mia couldn't argue with the prince, they made plans to go shopping on Philia's next day off. As Philia watched Mia's excitement, she was reminded of how different they were. Mia's charm and warmth made her adored by all, while Philia stood apart, needing to prove her worth through action rather than affection. In the royal palace, Prince Julius spoke to his companions with disdain about Philia. He mocked her title of the greatest of all time, comparing her unfavorably to past saints. Despite all of her accomplishments, she had earned more resentment than admiration. To Julius, she was not a woman, but a machine, untouchable, perfect, and incapable of being loved. He had decided that Cretonia did not need two saints, and plans were already in motion to rid the kingdom of Philia. The next day, Mia walked through the busy streets, proudly wearing her new rose hairpin. People greeted her warmly, eager to speak with her. A child offered her a handful of flowers, and she happily accepted. When someone asked about her hairpin, she smiled brightly, explaining that it had been a gift from the person she admired most. She wondered if Philia had already reached the castle. Inside the palace, Philia walked with steady steps, summoned urgently without knowing why. When she entered Prince Julius's chambers, he greeted her with an unusual smile. He began by mentioning her recent success in defeating the werewolves in the northwest, but quickly shifted to complaints. His soldiers felt she had overstepped her role, even daring to suggest new battle formations. Julius insisted it was not a woman's place to do such things. Philia listened in silence, sensing that something was wrong. Julius' grin widened as he rose from his seat and without hesitation delivered the news. Their engagement was over. Her fingers tightened around her dress as she calmly asked why. Julius explained that he had chosen to marry Mia instead. Philia's mind went blank. Julius claimed that she was too perfect, too inhuman. A saint should be gentle, graceful, and beloved. Philia, in contrast, was none of those things. Mia, however, was everything a queen should be, adored, beautiful, and warm. Compared to Mia, Philia would always fall short. For a long moment, Philia remained silent before finally asking if Mia knew about this. Julius chuckled, admitting that Mia didn't. Not yet. But he was certain Mia had always sought his attention. Before Philia could process his words, the door opened and her parents entered. They didn't object to Julius' decision. Instead, they urged Philia to accept it, seeing it as an opportunity. Mia would make a wonderful queen, and they would do anything for Mia's happiness. But before Philia could respond, Julius dropped another bombshell. She was leaving Cretonia. The realization struck her like a physical blow. Julius had sold her to Parnacorta, a neighboring kingdom that had recently lost its saint and was desperate for a new one. They had offered a fortune for Philia, an amount equal to Cretonia's entire annual budget. It was a perfect deal, Julius explained, making him look noble, willing to sacrifice his betrothed for the good of the kingdom. Her parents would receive 30% of the money. Her parents were overjoyed. To them, this deal would bring wealth and prestige, and they insisted that Mia would be happy as well. Philia's heart sank as she realized the truth. Her entire life of sacrifice had led to this moment. She had given everything to win her family's approval, yet they discarded her so easily. Mia, unaware of what had transpired, returned home with her usual grace. When Philia arrived, she found her suitcase placed outside the gates. It seemed she was no longer welcome. She picked it up, preparing to leave, but paused, wondering if there was something she could have done differently. Yet deep down, she knew there was nothing left to fix. That night, she left Cretonia in a carriage. Back in the castle, Prince Julius was already imagining how to spend the fortune he had secured. With the king's health declining and the first prince, Ferdinand, withdrawing in fear of his brother's power, Julius saw the throne within his grasp. Meanwhile, Philia traveled across harsh terrain, mountains, rivers, and winding roads. The long journey wore her down, and she found herself drifting in and out of sleep. Her thoughts wandered to Parnacorta, wondering what kind of place it was. She assumed they would work her to the bone, but no matter what awaited her, her duty as a saint remained unchanged. Her reverie was broken when the carriage came to a stop. The coachman informed her that they had reached the furthest point they could take her, and that she would need to continue on another carriage. Carrying her suitcase, Philia walked alone toward the tunnel marking the boundary between the kingdoms. At the far end, she spotted a group of mages waiting for her. The leader stepped forward. It was Oswald. He offered her his hand with a warm smile, something Philia had never experienced in Cretonia. Soon, Philia rode in the carriage sent by Prince Oswald of Parnacorta. As she traveled, she thought about how people had been treating her kindly. She believed it was only natural. They had paid a large amount for her, so of course they would want to protect their investment. But when she arrived at the castle, she was shocked. A grand welcome party had been prepared. The hall was beautifully decorated and long tables were filled with luxurious dishes. A group of nobles had gathered to meet her, led by the head of the church. He spoke warmly, saying how happy they were to welcome her to Parnacorta, and the others agreed. Philia wasn't used to being treated this way. Right away, she asked what her duties for the day were. But instead of work, she was told that all she had to do today was enjoy the welcome celebration. Smiling members of the church brought her different foods and encouraged her to eat. Their genuine happiness caught her off guard. She thanked them and sat down to eat. As she tasted the salad, she was surprised by how delicious it was. She remembered how, at events like these in the past, she used to stand quietly in the background. While she was eating, a man came up to her and asked how the food was. He mentioned that the vegetables had been hard to grow this year because of the lack of rain, but he had grown them himself. Philia assumed he was a farmer and was about to offer her help, but before she could finish speaking, another man approached and called him by name, Prince Oswald. Only then did Philia realize she had been speaking to the prince the whole time. The man who called him was Jorn, the head of the church who had greeted her earlier. He informed Oswald that Prince Richard was looking for him. Then, Jorn formally introduced Oswald as the second prince of Parnacorda. After the introduction, Prince Oswald turned to Philia and said he had something important to tell her. Philia felt nervous and held the edge of her skirt, unsure of what he was about to say. But instead of criticism, the prince bowed his head and apologized. He admitted that buying a saint might be seen as shameful and disrespectful to her dignity. However, their kingdom had been without a saint, and when Gratonia offered Philia, it felt like a blessing from the gods. He promised to do everything he could to support her while she stayed in Parnacorda, and said he hoped she would grow to love their country. Philia was stunned. She never thought a prince would speak to her like that. The idea of love felt distant to her. She wasn't even sure what it meant anymore. Her eyes began to sting with tears. Prince Oswald noticed and worried he had said something wrong. To lighten the mood, he brought the topic back to vegetables. Philia mentioned that she might be able to bring rain in a few days if she was given some time. But right after saying it, a memory came to her. Her mother used to warn her not to interfere in others' work, even when she wanted to help. She wondered if she was doing that again. But instead of being upset, Prince Oswald was overjoyed. His happiness attracted attention. A tall figure approached. It was Prince Richard, the first prince of Parnacorda. He greeted Philia and praised her abilities. As she stood between the two princes, who both spoke kindly to her and had high hopes for her, Philia suddenly felt the pressure of it all. The weight of their expectations settled heavily on her. Later that afternoon, Philia rode through the kingdom again in her carriage. The streets were dark and quiet. The people looked tired and worried. She listened to them speak. They talked about how prices were rising and how monsters were returning. Trade had become harder. Many of them remembered how good things were when the previous saint was alive. They spoke fondly of her kindness and how life had been easier. Some were hopeful about the arrival of the new saint, Philia, but others weren't sure about her. They thought she seemed distant. The next morning, Philia woke up in a massive bedroom. Jorn had told her she had a new home, which she hadn't expected anything this large. The room was bigger than her entire house in Gratonia. As she got up and started her day, she thought about what Prince Oswald had said, that she should try to love their kingdom. The idea felt overwhelming, but it gave her something to work toward. If she wanted to meet their expectations, she would have to work harder than ever. She walked through the wide hallways and met two people, Leonardo, the butler, and Rina, the maid. They were surprised to see her awake so early and told her she should rest. But Philia was used to starting her days early. Instead, she asked them to prepare something for her. That day, she rode in a carriage with a large map open in front of her. Her eyes scanned the kingdom of Parnacorda, which sat at the center of the continent and was surrounded by 5 other nations. It had many forests and mountains, places where monsters often lived. She studied the map quietly, choosing her first destination. Before she could speak, Leonardo and Rina explained that they had been assigned to assist her with her duties. Rina was surprised again by how early she worked, but Philia didn't find it unusual. It was just her routine. The two were beginning to realize that they have to adjust to her fast pace. She told them she was searching for monster nests, and based on the path they were taking, Leonardo guessed their destination, the Detrahorn Mountains. When they arrived at the base of the mountains, the sky was dark and the air felt heavy. A strange pressure made it hard to breathe. Philia quickly sensed a strong monster presence. She told them to stay back, but both of them drew their weapons and stood beside her without hesitation. They had come to protect her while she worked. Philia was surprised, but figured they just wanted to make sure she did her job properly. It was the first time anyone had ever watched her perform her saintly duties, and it made her feel a little uneasy. As they walked into the woods, Rina started asking questions. She had never seen a saint at work before. Leonardo, who had once worked with the former saint, explained the process. He said the saint must first pray deeply and call on divine power to create light pillars. These pillars formed a sacred barrier that weakened monsters and eventually drove them away. The more pillars created, the stronger the barrier. But creating even one took a full day. That's why he and Rina were there, to keep her safe while she worked. But to their amazement, Philia completed the first pillar in just 30 minutes. Leonardo checked his watch in disbelief. To Philia was normal. She casually told them she planned to build 7 more pillars that day and expected to finish by the afternoon. Rina stared at her, speechless, and even Leonardo was shocked. He remembered how difficult it had been for the previous saint to make just one. Watching Philia move from one site to the next with such focus, he realized how truly special she was. Prince Oswald had made the right decision. She was far beyond what anyone had expected. By the time she finished the last pillar, the area had completely changed. The heavy air was gone, replaced by warm light and soft wind. Leonardo praised her work and suggested they return home and rest, but Philia refused. She wanted to study the plants and animals in the area for future research. She also planned to head west soon to set up more barriers. Rina and Leonardo looked at each other, tired but resigned. They had no choice but to keep up with her. When they finally returned that evening, Philia apologized for keeping them out so late. They said it was fine and even complimented her, though in truth, they were still in shock. She hadn't given them a single break. Even now, she was talking about her next tasks. Eventually, they spoke up. They told her she needed to stop. She was working herself too hard, and if something happened to her, it would reflect badly on them. Leonardo was blunt. She had done 3 times more than any other saint had ever done in one day. Rina agreed. She said Philia was going far beyond what was expected of a saint. Philia listened, confused. She remembered her training, how she was told to learn everything in order to protect her country. But she also remembered how Prince Julius once told her to stop when she started developing a new medicine. Leonardo then suggested she take the next day off. Philia looked at him as if she had never heard those words before. Taking a break felt wrong to her, like it would put others in danger. Leonardo pushed back. He said her health mattered. If she collapsed, the kingdom would be in even greater danger. Philia didn't respond at first. Everything they said went against what her mother had taught her. Still, she insisted that the kingdom was in crisis. She had to at least place barriers in the eastern and southern regions tomorrow. After they left her room, Rina and Leonardo talked about her. Rina said Philia was hardworking and serious, but also a little clumsy and unsure in some ways. She seemed to prefer doing things alone. Then Leonardo shared something Prince Oswald had told him. Philia had traveled all the way to Parnacorda by herself, with no escort or assistant. Rina was shocked. That wasn't how a saint should be treated. Saints protected their country. They should be cared for and respected. Rina decided that from now on, she would spoil Philia a little more, hoping it would teach her to take better care of herself. The next morning, the streets were livelier than usual. Bags of fruits and vegetables lined the market stalls. People talked excitedly about Philia's work. For the first time in a long while, they could finally buy what they needed. Word had spread about how she worked from morning until night, and everyone praised her. They were happy to have her as their saint. Prince Oswald heard the praise as he walked through the city, and a quiet smile formed on his lips. Meanwhile, back in Gratonia, Mia had become the new saint. She had always admired Philia, her strength, her wisdom, and her kindness. Mia believed that if she just followed Philia's example, everything would be fine. But now that Philia was gone, she was facing the harsh reality of doing the work alone. Monsters continued to appear, and the usual hunting teams couldn't keep up. Prince Julius was furious. He had been sending out teams regularly, but they weren't making enough progress. Without Philia, the kingdom was falling apart. She had managed everything before, and now that she was gone, it was clear how much they had relied on her. Angry, Prince Julius ordered that money be spent freely to fix the problem, no matter what it cost. The kingdom had become noisy and chaotic. Everyone looked to Mia for answers, hoping she would solve their problems. But even Mia felt lost. It didn't make sense. Philia had gone to help another country, yet she hadn't told Mia anything before leaving. Maya remembered the night she disappeared. She had asked her father why. If a saint was needed, Mia could have gone. She wasn't even engaged yet, but her father had lied. He told her it was Philia's choice. Now Mia was thinking more clearly. Philia would never leave without preparing her, saying goodbye or explaining things. That could only mean one thing. It all happened too fast, or Philia wasn't allowed to say anything. Mia was angry. She wondered who had taken her sister away. Whoever it was, she promised she would hold them responsible. Meanwhile, the maid Rina was fighting monsters with ease. Her movements were fast and sharp. Beside her, Leonardo the butler fought with equal grace and strength. While they fought, Philia stood back, marking locations on her map. She thought about the stories she had heard of the Chever Order in Parnacorda. Maybe he trained their maids and butlers in combat. Even so, she was still amazed by how skilled Rina and Leonardo were. When the last monster fell, Philia praised their efforts. But both Rina and Leonardo downplayed their success. They said the monsters had already been weakened by the sanctuary Philia had created, and the basic potion she gave them helped a lot. Rina noticed strange marks on Philia's map and asked what they meant. Philia explained that she was tracking the growing number of monster attacks. Even though they beat the monsters each time, more always came. Philia told them there was a demon realm beneath the surface. As that realm grew, more monsters would appear on the surface. Before they could talk more, Leonardo said the carriage was ready to take them to the castle. But Rina reminded Philia they had one more stop to make first. In the town of Parnacorda, Prince Oswald walked through the streets, greeting people. He told them he was going on a date, which made everyone curious. When he reached the meeting place, he was surprised to see Philia already there. She wore a maroon dress, something she rarely wore. Oswald was stunned by how beautiful she looked, and Rina, watching from behind, smiled knowingly. She had helped plan the date. Philia had been engaged once before, so she didn't understand what a date really meant. She followed Rina's advice to let Oswald lead the way and show her around Albert. This kind of attention felt strange to Philia, and she didn't know how to respond. Their first stop was the merchant district, now lively and safe thanks in part to Philia's efforts. Oswald thanked her, but Philia didn't think she deserved it. She was just doing her job. Still, her heart beat faster at his kind words. Rina noticed and smiled. As they walked, a man from Gertonia saw Philia and thanked her for saving his business. His young son was with him. Philia remembered how kids in Gertonia used to fear her, so she expected the child to be scared too. But instead, the boy smiled brightly and thanked her. Philia didn't know what to say. Many townspeople also gave her fruit and vegetables to show their thanks, and she felt overwhelmed. Before the crowd could grow too large, Oswald gently took her hand and led her away, apologizing to the people. Rina followed behind, amused. Next, they visited a peaceful cafe filled with flowers. Oswald told Philia she could order anything she wanted, but she had trouble choosing. She wasn't picky. Seeing this, Oswald suggested a few things and Philia just agreed. The whole experience felt unfamiliar to her. She wasn't used to being treated kindly. Oswald tried to comfort her by talking casually and reminding her not to work too hard. His concern made her even more quiet. She didn't know how to open up. Her past had taught her to keep everything to herself. There was one thing she could talk about, though: tea. She enjoyed its smell and how it calmed her mind. She sipped her cup and admitted she didn't know how to say more. When Oswald asked where she wanted to go next, she told him the truth. She wanted to visit the castle's restricted library. It wasn't a fun date idea, but the books there called to her. She wanted to learn more about the monster attacks. Something about them didn't match up. She saw a pattern in old records from both Gertonia and Parnacorda. The demon realm, she believed, was slowly moving closer to the surface. Oswald and Rina didn't understand at first, so Philia told them an old story from 400 years ago. Back then, the demon realm nearly broke through. A powerful demon named Asmodeus led the invasion, killing people and animals. But a saint named Fianna Asfil fought back. She built huge barriers and sealed Asmodeus away, saving the land. Because of what Philia said, Oswald quickly called for a meeting at the castle. Important leaders gathered around a large table while Philia explained the danger. She believed monster numbers could rise 20 times higher. Though she looked calm, she was surprised Oswald had listened and taken her seriously. In Gertonia, no one had believed her, especially Prince Julius, who told her to stay quiet and not speak up. The leaders panicked. If Philia was right, their army wouldn't be enough to handle the threat. They needed to strengthen their defenses, but there wasn't enough money. Philia expected doubt, but Oswald stood up and said they should triple the military budget. He promised to speak to the king and his brother. His strong support silenced the room, and slowly the others began to agree. Philia was touched by Oswald's trust. She worked with castle officials to review maps and plan defenses. But even after long hours, it was clear they didn't have enough soldiers to cover the whole kingdom. She offered another idea, a powerful ritual to create a large barrier that would protect the entire land. Jor, a church leader, warned it was difficult. Philia said she could do it, but she would have to stay in the center of the capital for the barrier to work, giving up her duties elsewhere. She expected Oswald to hesitate or be disappointed, but instead he welcomed the idea. He said she had already done more than enough, and it would be better to keep her safe in the capital. Later that day, Philia stood outside, lost in thought. Oswald came to see her. She admitted she missed her younger sister, Mia. Mia didn't know the ancient rituals like she did. If something happened to her homeland, Gertonia, Mia wouldn't be able to help. Philia worried for her safety. Oswald understood right away and promised to help. He arranged for a letter to be sent to Mia in Gertonia. Philia wrote it in the castle library. Back in Gertonia, Mia was still upset. Philia had left so suddenly, and no one gave her a clear reason. Her parents kept saying it was Philia's choice, but Mia didn't believe them. She decided to ask Prince Julius directly. But instead of answers, she found Julius kneeling at his door with a bouquet of red roses, asking her to marry him. Mia was shocked. Philia had only just left, and now he wanted to marry her. Her stomach turned. She started to suspect her family had planned this all along. Maya hid her feelings behind a sweet smile and told Julius she needed time to think. He agreed, charmed by her. But deep inside, Mia had a new goal. She would gain his trust and uncover the truth. Why her sister had been sent away and who was responsible. Around Julius, she kept smiling even when he insulted Philia. Monster sightings were growing too, and her holy duties began to feel empty. Her parents started pressuring her to accept the proposal. They worried Julius would change his mind. One day, her father got a letter, one from Philia, sent from the castle. Without a second thought, he threw it into the fire. Mia never even knew it had arrived. She continued her plan. One day, she heard voices from Julius's room. Two men were talking about how Julius gotten rid of a burden, gained money, and earned praise. They were talking about Philia. She had been sold off by her own parents and fiancé. They said it was sad she was hated by her own family. Mia froze. The truth crushed her. All the time she had ignored how badly Philia was treated came rushing back. Through tears, she whispered an apology, but it was too late. The next day, Julius came to ask for her answer. Mia smiled sweetly and asked about her sister again. Julius rolled his eyes and said the usual. Philia was a burden, not fit to be a saint. He praised Mia instead, calling her beautiful and obedient. She clenched her skirt, holding back her anger. Then, with the same fake smile, she said yes, she would marry him. Julius celebrated, not knowing what was coming. Mia, now full of pain and rage, planned her revenge. She would win his heart and then destroy him. That would be justice for Philia. Mia sat alone in her room, a small candle flickering beside her as she wrote a letter to her sister Philia. She begged for help, explaining that monsters were appearing more often and the kingdom was in danger. She also mentioned the prince, but as she kept writing, her words turned into personal thoughts. Frustrated, Mia crumpled the letter and started over. Her mind was a mess, and the ink spread across the page from her heavy grip. Mia wondered why Philia hadn't replied to any of her letters. If Philia noticed the strange events happening across the land, wouldn't she have reached out by now? Mia hoped the silence didn't mean Philia was in trouble. In the capital of Parnacorta, the city buzzed with excitement. People gathered around the palace courtyard to see Philia perform an ancient ritual to protect the kingdom. The king thought it was the perfect time to introduce her officially as the new saint. Prince Oswald believed the introduction wasn't needed. Philia had already become popular through her divine work. Still, Philia stayed calm and didn't seem to care about formal titles. Then the prince arrived and thanked Philia for everything she had done. He said choosing her was the best decision he ever made, even though he and Oswald had once argued about it. Philia didn't say anything, her mind was on the ritual. Before she left, Prince Oswald told her sincerely that he trusted her to take care of the kingdom. Philia walked toward her place for the ritual, the crowd watching her with a mix of concern and admiration. As she walked, she thought of the kindness of the people in Parnacorta. Even though she hadn't chosen to come here, she now wanted to stay and protect them. Philia knelt down and began to pray, asking for the kingdom to be protected. A soft glow surrounded her, growing stronger until she looked like a goddess. Shining shards of light floated around her, and the magical pillars across the kingdom lit up with power. A glowing shield rose from the ground, wrapping around Parnacorta like a wall. The people stared in silence, amazed by the sight. The ritual continued until a large symbol appeared in the sky, marking the success of the spell. Philia stood up, breathing quietly. She turned to the people with a peaceful look as if nothing unusual had happened. Just then, a dark voice echoed in Philia's mind. A demon had found her. But before she could react, the crowd rushed around her, cheering and praising her success. That evening, Rena walked through the city, enjoying the peace Philia had brought. Many people came up to her, giving her gifts, vegetables, eggs, scarves, flowers meant for Philia. The people were truly thankful. When Rena arrived at Philia's house, she found her still busy with work. Even though she had no more rituals to perform, Philia didn't know how to relax. She had no hobbies, no way to pass the time. Rena suggested taking a walk, but she knew people would gather the moment they saw Philia. Philia admitted she didn't know how to garden or fish. Rena then suggested reading, especially romance books. Philia looked confused. She had only ever read books about saints. Romance was new to her. She didn't dislike the idea, she had just never thought about it. Her mind briefly went to Prince Oswald, but she quickly pushed the thought away. Rena gave her a stack of romance novels, curious to see if she would enjoy them. Suddenly, Prince Oswald arrived with Leonardo. He wanted to speak with Philia in private, so they went to have tea and desserts. Before explaining his main reason for visiting, Oswald cleared something up. He said it wasn't that he didn't want her in Parnacorta, it was how she was brought there that bothered him. Buying a saint from another kingdom felt wrong, like she was being treated as an object. He admitted he and his brother had argued over it, but he truly was glad she was there. Then Leonardo reminded him of the real reason he came. He asked Philia if she would be willing to tutor someone. Later at dinner, Philia talked about the offer. She wasn't sure she was the right person for the job. Rina encouraged her, saying it might be good for her to have someone to talk to. Hearing this made Philia think of her sister Mia. She still hadn't received a reply to her letter. Leonardo noticed her worry and promised to check if the messenger had really delivered it to Gratonia. Philia returned to eating and said the food was delicious. Rina and Leonardo were happy to hear it. When Philia first arrived, she barely spoke, but now she was more open and both of them noticed the change. Leonardo, who had cooked the meal, felt especially proud, but he said much of what was on the table had been gifts from the people of Parnacorda. As Philia quietly ate, she thought about everything that had happened since she came to this kingdom. She had experienced kindness she never knew in Gratonia. She felt thankful for the people and for Rina and Leonardo, who supported her. Meanwhile, in Gratonia, Mia sat at a grand dinner with Prince Julius. He smiled and promised her a life full of luxury after they married. Mia smiled back politely, but kept her real feelings hidden. That night, Rina rushed into Philia's room with exciting news. Mia had finally written back. Philia eagerly opened the letter, but her face soon fell. Mia said she hadn't received any letters from Philia. That meant her message had never arrived. Yet the messenger in Parnacorda had sworn he delivered it. Philia suspected her parents might have destroyed the letter before Mia could see it. They wanted to keep the sisters apart. Seeing Philia upset, Rina and Leonardo introduced someone. Himari, a quiet woman who suddenly appeared from above the ceiling. To Philia's surprise, Himari was one of her secret guards. She had been closed all along, blending into crowds, hiding during events. Philia had never noticed her. Himari was a ninja trained to remain unseen. Rina believed Himari could deliver a letter to Mia safely. Philia, though nervous, trusted her. Leonardo warned of the dangers. Monsters roamed the lands. But Himari calmly said she was ready. She would risk her life to protect the saint. Philia agreed to let her go on one condition. If the journey became too dangerous, Himari had to run. But if she could reach Mia safely, she must deliver the letter and protect her. Himari knelt and promised to do exactly that. In Gratonia, Mia stood deep in the forest, raising protective pillars to shield the kingdom. The soldiers behind her clapped, impressed with her speed. Some even said she was better than Philia. Mia found that funny. She could create pillars faster, but her barriers were weaker. They couldn't hold back strong monsters unless she layered them, which took much more time and energy. Suddenly, a group of monsters blocked her path. The soldiers panicked and didn't help. Mia stepped forward alone, casting a strong spell. It hit many monsters, but more came. She cast the spell again, putting all of her strength into it. When she looked back, the soldiers had run away, leaving her alone. Just as she collapsed, someone caught her. It was Himari wearing a hood and disguised as a man. She gave Mia a handkerchief and a folded letter fell out. Mia gasped. It was from Philia. She asked about her sister, and Himari assured her that Philia was safe. She told Mia that the people of Parnacorda loved Philia and supported her deeply. Mia clutched the letter, feeling a warm sense of relief. Before they could talk more, the soldiers returned. Himari slipped away, but Mia quietly asked her to come to her room later that night. That evening, as Mia sat in her room, Himari appeared, dropping down from the ceiling. Mia was surprised at first, then smiled. Himari said she had avoided the guards and used the ceiling to stay hidden. Her earlier disguise had helped her travel unnoticed. Mia had already read Philia's letter many times. It described everything Philia had done in Parnacorda. Mia wished she had seen the ritual herself. Himari quietly agreed that it was amazing. Still, Mia began to feel unsure. She would need to learn that same ritual someday, but she didn't know if she could do it like her sister had. She also worried about her kingdom. Prince Julius was selfish, and Mia didn't trust his decisions. When Mia shared her doubts, Himari remembered Philia's words to protect her sister at any cost. With calm determination, Himari offered a solution. If Mia wanted to escape, she could take her to Parnacorda, where she would be safe and reunited with Philia. Mia paused. The idea of seeing her sister again gave her hope, and truly she had no reason to stay in Gratonia, a place that had once cast Philia aside. A carriage stopped at the castle gates. A cheerful red-haired girl stepped down with a wide smile. Her name was Grace Martillas, the youngest daughter of the famous Martillas family from Bolmern. Philia stood nearby, ready to welcome her with a formal but kind greeting. As soon as Grace saw Philia, she squealed loudly with excitement and ran toward her, full of energy. She quickly introduced herself, saying how much she admired Philia. A few days earlier, Prince Oswald had come to Philia with a request. He shared that the Martillas family had a long history of producing saints. In fact, the Elkrins family of Parnacorda, also known for saints, was once part of the Martillas family line. Because of this connection, the kingdom of Bolnarm had asked Philia to train Grace in purification magic. At first, Philia was unsure, but she accepted, knowing the importance of the request. Grace was so excited she looked like she might burst, but her butler, Arnold, stepped in and formally introduced her. He also mentioned how much Grace admired St. Philia. Philia was surprised by Grace's energy. Later, as Philia sipped tea in her peaceful mansion, Leonardo arrived. He asked her if she was really sure about teaching purification magic to someone from another kingdom. Philia nodded. "It's not forbidden," she said, though she admitted the magic was hard to learn. It required ancient rituals, and while talent wasn't necessary, it took deep understanding and sharp senses. If someone didn't have enough magical power, they needed to learn an old language to do it. This made Philia think of her sister Mia. Mia couldn't use purification magic because she didn't know the ancient language. Philia wished she could teach Mia too. But the Martillis family had already included the old language in their training, which gave Grace an advantage. The next morning, Philia began teaching Grace right away. Grace was thrilled. Philia told her the two main things she needed were knowledge and perception. Since Grace had already studied the ancient language, now she had to learn how to sense magic, specifically natural magical energy called mana. When Grace admitted she didn't understand what mana was, Philia explained. She showed a diamond-like object glowing in her hand and said it was called odd, magic from inside oneself. But mana came from nature. Rituals like the purification circle needed more magic than a saint could produce alone, so they used mana from the world. To help Grace sense mana, Philia told her to stand in the sunlight and feel the rhythm of nature. Grace tried hard, but no matter how much she focused, she felt nothing unusual. She became frustrated. Philia remembered her own struggles and comforted her, saying this was normal. To encourage her, Philia performed an ancient ritual, summoning the robe of light. A soft glow surrounded her. The mana became slightly visible, but Grace didn't focus on that. She was stunned by how beautiful Philia looked, calling her an angel. Philia shyly dismissed the compliment. Grace then revealed why she admired Philia so much. She had read the books Philia wrote. Though Philia had written them as simple records, they had given Grace hope. As the fourth daughter in a saintly family, Grace was never seen as special, but Philia's books helped her believe in herself. Philia had almost forgotten those books. Her mother scolded her for publishing them. Her former fiancé, Prince Julius, had even accused her of bragging. In the end, the books were banned and burned in Gratonia. Philia had felt ashamed of them ever since, but hearing Grace's words made her realize those books had value after all. Maybe the world was bigger than Gratonia. Later, over tea and sweets, Grace asked if Philia had ever taught anyone before. She was surprised to learn she was Philia's first student. Philia said she was copying her own teacher, the former saint of Gratonia, Hildegard Adenauer, who was also her aunt. Their aunt had trained her harshly, leaving her alone in mountains and deserts, making her sleep on thorns. It was painful, but Philia said she got used to it. Grace asked why her teacher was so strict. Philia remembered Hildegard saying it was because she looked like her parents, whom Hildegard disliked. So Hildegard made her stronger to survive that burden. Only now did Philia realize her aunt cared in her own way. Later that evening, Philia read a romance novel Rena had lent her. Rena excitedly explained the story. Then Leonardo came with a letter. It was from Himare, confirming that Philia's earlier letter had been delivered. Leonardo reminded her they would visit Elizabeth's grave tomorrow with Grace. The next morning, Philia and Grace went to the grave. Grace revealed Elizabeth was her cousin. She had been born weak and died 3 months earlier. As they stood there, Prince Richard arrived with flowers. At first, he mistook Grace for Elizabeth. Once he realized who she was, he quietly laid fresh flowers next to some older ones and prayed. He explained that he had once been engaged to Elizabeth and that she loved the scent of golden flowers, the ones he brought. Philia watched quietly. It was clear Prince Richard had loved Elizabeth deeply. Philia realized she had never experienced that kind of love herself. She had always wanted to be cherished, but didn't know how to love in return. The next day, Philia looked out the window, deep in thought. Rena came in and gave her something to deliver to Prince Oswald. Philia walked to the garden and handed it over. As she turned to leave, Oswald invited her to share the sandwiches with him. They sat on a bench surrounded by rows of vegetables and herbs, grown by the prince himself. Philia wondered why a prince would garden. Oswald said he had no interest in the throne despite the noble's support. He loved his family and kingdom but wanted a simpler life. His honesty touched Philia. She told him she'd seen Prince Richard at the grave. Oswald said Richard truly loved Elizabeth, even though he had once promised to protect the saint instead. He blamed himself for her death and buried himself in work. Oswald could only hope his brother would heal someday. Then Oswald talked about how gardening gave him peace and purpose. Philia realized she had no such hobby. Her life had always been about duty and chasing her parents' approval. She never asked what she wanted, but now she saw that her actions had brought happiness to others. She was beginning to understand her worth. Oswald leaned toward her and said, "You're doing great." The words hit her heart. words she had always wanted to hear from her parents. Tears welled up in her eyes. Over the next few days, Grace showed great progress. She could now sense mana and even reflect light like Philia. Meanwhile, Arnold seemed very interested in the lessons. Grace thought he liked ancient magic, but he was really gathering information to report to the king, who wanted to track Grace's progress. Grace complained about her father's high expectations, but then Philia suddenly froze mid-lesson, remembering something about the old rituals. Without explaining, she ended the session, leaving Grace confused. Elsewhere, in Prince Richard's quarters, he called Prince Oswald and handed him a sealed letter from Bretonia. Oswald read it, and his face changed from confusion to anger. He slammed it down. Bretonia had made a shocking demand. They wanted Philia back. Mia stood in Prince Julius's room as he skimmed through the warning report she prepared. It explained that danger from the demon realm might soon threaten the kingdom, but Julius didn't take it seriously. He barely read the paper before calling it nonsense. While he talked, Mia barely listened. In her mind, she kept hearing the same advice: leave Bretonia while she still could. It was the smart choice, but she couldn't walk away. Not after what Julius did, selling her sister Philia to another kingdom. Julius dismissed her warnings, claiming politics were a man's duty. Mia reminded him of the wealth he gained after Philia left, but he had wasted it building a giant gold statue. Shocked, Maya realized the kingdom was in danger not just from monsters, but from the prince himself. Suddenly, the king entered, weak and tired, but still alert. He asked Mia about the demon threat. Julius quickly interrupted, saying she was just a woman. That made the king angry. He scolded Julius for sending Philia away without his approval and for ignoring Mia. The king asked Mia to keep doing her work, though he admitted he was growing weaker. Without Philia, the kingdom's medicine supply was running low. Although she had left a recipe behind, the guards claimed they lost it. Mia then realized something worse. Julius sent Philia away to remove the king. If the king died, Julius would take full control. Alone with him later, Julius insisted Gretonia's army was enough. Mia found it foolish and made a plan. She convinced him to come with her to the border, where monster attacks were increasing. The next day, the prince screamed in fear at the sight of hundreds of monsters. Mia hoped this would finally make him see the truth. She fought off the first wave alone. Julius faked an illness and tried to leave, but monsters blocked his path. Even then, he blamed everything on Philia and accused Mia of trying to embarrass him. As danger grew, Julius hid behind Mia and used her as a shield. Despite being her fiancé, he showed no care for her. He still believed women should stay quiet. After the fight, he blamed Philia again and announced plans to bring her back. Mia doubted that would work. Julius claimed Philia was worthless and told Mia to act like a proper wife. Mia felt crushed. No matter what she did, he wouldn't listen. Elsewhere, a woman was approached by a demon named Mammon, but his master appeared and cut off his head. Mammon calmly reattached it. They spoke about the ancient demon Asmodeus seal 400 years ago. Over 400 years ago, St. Fianna had sealed him away, but now that the demon realm was getting closer, the seal was weakening. If it broke, Asmodeus would return. Back at the castle, Julius sat alone, thinking about how things fell apart after selling Philia. He used to be praised until Philia arrived and became the greatest saint. He felt overshadowed and humiliated. As he talked to himself, a shadow appeared. It was Marcus Prize. He agreed with everything Julius had said and offered a solution. He told him that St. Fianna had hidden a powerful ring beneath the capital's church. This ring held all her magic. Whoever broke its seal would gain great power. Julius became excited. This was his chance to become stronger than anyone, stronger than Philia, Mia, and even his father. Marquis seemed pleased. His eyes glowed red and blue flames surrounded him as if he wasn't fully himself anymore. But once Marquis left, he seemed confused, as if he had been controlled. News soon reached Parnacoda. Bretonia had requested Philia's return. Prince Oswald and Leonardo guessed things must be getting worse. Though they didn't have to agree, Oswald believed Philia should decide for herself. Philia thought it over. If she left, the holy circle protecting Parnacoda would weaken. She had already sent Himari to help Mia, but it seemed Julius wasn't listening. Anger bubbled up inside her. Oswald noticed and gently reminded her that she wasn't alone. He offered to send his own knights to support Mia. Even Leonardo, her loyal butler, was once a knight. Their help could really make a difference. Philia felt relieved and quietly thanked him. Leonardo and Lena were surprised. Philia almost never asked for help. Embarrassed, she quickly changed the topic and offered tea. As she walked away, Oswald and Leonardo reflected on how much she had grown. She was finally learning to trust others. Meanwhile, Philia's training with Grace was going well. Grace was steadily improving at control and mana. One day, Leonardo handed Philia a letter from Himari. Philia paused training and read it over tea and sweets. The message brought troubling news. The king's health was worsening and the medicine recipe had been deliberately lost. Julius was scheming in secret, and Mia was trying to stop him. Philia was shocked. Mia had always been so gentle. For her to take bold action, things had to be truly serious. Philia decided to send the improved medicine recipe back with Himari, hoping it might help the king recover. She believed Dritonia could stabilize again with the king's return. The knights Oswald was sending would help Mia as well. Meanwhile, Mia talks to Himari about Julius. Himari offered to kill him, but Mia refused. Such an act could start a war. She admitted she wanted Julius to suffer, but she was a saint, not someone who acted on revenge. Still, deep down, she felt she might not be a saint for long. She remembered her childhood, how she admired Philia after seeing her saintly debut, saving people with powerful light. From that day on, Mia wanted to be strong too. But now Philia was hated by those she helped. Mia felt torn between anger and reason. Crying, she opened up to Himari, who told her she didn't need to be like Philia. She just had to stay true to herself. His words helped Mia. She decided to expose Julius's corruption, not for revenge, but to protect the kingdom. To stabilize the kingdom while the king recovered, Mia knew she needed help. The best person for that job was Prince Fernando, the first prince of Britonia. In Britonia, Mia was greeted by a man named Pierre, her new personal guard. She asked him to take her to Prince Fernando. As they walked through the city, Pierre spoke about the struggles within the kingdom. Many soldiers secretly supported Fernando, but they had to hide it from Prince Julius. Fernando, once the heir, had been sickly since childhood and was placed under house arrest 12 years ago. Julius had taken power and misused resources, while Fernando slowly faded from public view. When Mia finally met Fernando, he was weak and sick, sitting in a dim room. She introduced herself as Julius's new fiancé and explained that Philia, her older sister and a saint, had broken the previous engagement. Fernando was surprised to hear that Philia had left. Mia told him about the king's illness and how Julius had taken over. Fernando calmly said that Julius would likely dispose of him too. Despite his bleak view, Mia urged him to fight back for the kingdom's sake. But Fernando, too full of doubt, asked her to leave. Later, Mia talked to Pierre about her frustration. She learned that Fernando had stopped taking the medicine Philia once made. Though Julius didn't ruin it, Fernando had given up on it himself. The next day, Mia visited Fernando again and asked why he stopped taking Philia's medicine. He said it made his hands shake. He feared that if he looked healthier, Julius might feel threatened and kill him. He preferred to stay sick rather than risk his life. Mia promised to protect him, but Fernando still refused. Mia told him she would stand by him no matter what and left, even though Fernando secretly hoped she wouldn't return. Meanwhile, in Parnacoda, Philia picked up jewelry making as a hobby. She planned to gift a bracelet to Prince Oswald as thanks for his kindness. One day, she gave Lena a bracelet too, making her tear up with joy. Their moment was interrupted by Leonardo, who brought a letter from Himari in Britonia. The letter warned of worsening conditions, even with help from the former saint. Philia was later summoned by the king of Parnacoda. Worried it might be about her saintly duties, she was surprised when he praised her efforts in protecting the kingdom. He asked if there was anything she wanted. Philia immediately said she wished to help Mia. The king agreed and promised his full support. He reminded her that even saints must think of themselves sometimes. Later, Philia shared her plan to create a massive purification circle that could protect the entire continent. The spell required Grace's help and the magic of her 3 saintly sisters. Grace was shocked but accepted eagerly, vowing to train hard. Philia taught her day and night, using special tools and guidance to build her power. Prince Richard later visited and praised the plan, realizing how much Philia had grown. She declared she wouldn't die if her duty wasn't over yet. Her strong will deeply moved him. Back in Britonia, Mia visited Fernando again and brought a homemade picnic. He was surprised by her kindness, especially with her busy schedule. When she urged him to stand up and fight, Fernando admitted he'd used his illness as a shield, afraid of being truly useless. Julius's cruelty had made him feel worthless. Mia cried, telling him that failure isn't shameful, but running away is. Then, overwhelmed, she left the room. Alone, Fernando looked at the food she left behind and smiled faintly. He realized her care had shaken something in him. Stepping into the sunlight, he wondered if she would come back or if she had given up on him. That thought, more than anything, pushed him forward. If he wanted to see her again, he'd have to move forward himself. If you're enjoying the journey of this series, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps.